Okay, today we're going to make a reentry effect. We're going to be making it with geometry and a material. If you want to figure out how to do it with particles, there's a tutorial for that by CG How that I'll link in the description, and you can even combine them if you really want. We can add like sparks to this. In addition to that, we're going to implement it kind of activating when you fall. So where it will speed up and then it will dissipate as soon as you slow down. Also, it will kind of move a little bit based on the velocity you have. So that way, if you're coming in at an angle, it will still work. All right, with that being said, we're going to actually start in Blender. The base of this is going to be a sphere, and we are just going to that's Shift Z 3, and I am just deleting the top section of a sphere, and then I'm just going to press E and extrude this out by clicking Z. And doesn't have to be perfect. The main thing we want to check when we're making this is our UVs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into edge mode and then click these, and then I'm just going to bring this up by 0.5 on the Y, like that. And this should be right at 1 Y, which is what it is. So that should be good. Let me double check. We'll make this about half, so that way there's not UV stretching. It doesn't have to be perfect since the texture is moving and a little bit of stretching here and there. Last thing we want to do is we want to smooth this out. Okay. I'm actually going to bring this one up a bit, and I'll do that in the UVs as well. Okay, so let's export this now. Export FBX, and we're gonna dump it in our main project. Usually the easiest way to do that is just do show and explore, just like that. And I'm just gonna save it. I'm doing this on the other monitor, but I'm just gonna save my FBX asset just like this, just all the normal, and I'll call this half sphere tutorial, just like that. And I'm going to keep this open in case there's anything wrong with it, but I think we should be good. So I'm going to drag that half sphere into here, and then we are going to, oh, that's the wrong half sphere. We want half sphere tutorial, this one right here. We don't want collision. We don't need to build nanite or anything, and it's just going to be like that. We're now going to make the material, and we'll just call this M_reentry, and I'll call this tutorial as well. We are going to go ahead and add this to that material as well. So the way I like to just click it, and then you can press this little arrow, reentry, so that way it's on our mesh. And then I'm going to do Control-Shift-S just to save everything, because Unreal does crash from time to time. All right, in the actual material, we are going to make this an unlit shader, and it's also going to be translucent. And then we are just going to build it up. So we're going to start with some coordinates. texture coordinates. We want to be able to control the tiling, so I'm going to hold down S, and I'm just going to make a tiling node. I'm going to start this around 0.4, and I'm going to multiply this here, so that way when we make material instances we can control how much this tiles. I'm going to hold down P. We're going to make a panner since we want the fire to be moving. And then I'm also going to M, and we're going to multiply this into the speed, which we will create a node for. I'm going to make this about 3 by default, and then I'm going to do make float 2. This I'm going to actually connect to the Y. You can press Alt and remove that. And I'm going to multiply that into here. The reason you need to multiply the tiling with the speed, because it will actually, the speed will change depending on how you tile it, since the panner is by the UV coordinates. So if your texture is scaled up, it will, I think it will go faster, and vice versa. So in order to kind of normalize that, you can multiply the tiling by the speed, and that means the speed will always be the same even if you adjust the tiling. You can still control the speed, but it means when you're adjusting the tiling, the speed won't change, which is good. We're then going to break these two components. Let me just check that. Okay, that's good. This is in Unreal 5.1. Yes, but I think most of this can be done in Unreal 5. Don't quote me on that though. Okay, so we want to do something here. So this is overall tiling, but some of these textures actually look a bit better when you stretch them. It kind of makes the fire look like it's going by faster. So I call this height ratio, like that. And I usually put this to about 6, like that. And then make float 2. Once again, I want this here, just like that. And that's so if you want your texture to be a bit stretched in either direction, you can adjust it with that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to want to get a texture sample. There's a nice fire effect that I grabbed online. I'll link this in the description. So I think it's just called Fire Seamless. There we go. Fire Texture Seamless. Everything we did here goes into its UVs. And I'm actually going to make a switch here. So static bool, not parameter. Static bool. Yeah, I think so actually. Bool parameter. And we're going to use texture color question mark. We'll go ahead and set this on by default, but since we're actually going to be using a curve to give the nice blending effect here, you can even kind of make it fancy where it's got some rippling lines. Sometimes you may not want the color of the texture, and you basically just want like the mask of it. So in that instance, we can create a switch, a static switch. This is the value, and then this will be the full color. This will just be the red channel in case we want just a black and white of this texture instead. Okay, so now that we have kind of the fire, we can plug this in so you can kind of see what's going on here. So this is what we got so far. It's just fire moving up in a direction, which is what we want. Now we work on the gradient and the opacity. So as we do that, I'm just going to hook this up how it's going to be. And we're going to add in another parameter that we're going to use in our blueprint. And so I'm going to press S and I'm going to call this full fade. And this is basically just, it tones down the material that we can control. We keep it to 1 by default, so that multiplying it by 1 doesn't do anything, but it means whenever we want, we can, so let's put this at like 0.1. You see it's like basically gone, and then it is fully gone. We are going to create another texture coordinate here. We're going to break this one. And then we are going to make a fog gradient. I think that's going to be a curve atlas is what it's going to be. There we go. Oh, it's not actually going to be called fog. It's going to be, we'll call it the flame gradient. Flame curve makes more sense. Granted, you don't have to make it flame, but that's the idea here. And we'll plug this in here, but now we actually need something for it. See, it's asking for, here it wants the curve atlas, and here it wants a curve. So let's set that up now. So the curves are actually under, at least in Unreal 5.1, they're under miscellaneous. So I make that curve atlas. Yeah, new is fine. There's nothing really in here, but we need to add in a gradient. So we have to create that separately here, which is also under miscellaneous curve. And we're going to make a curve linear color, just like that. So let me, we'll make this fairly simple. So this is just kind of a yellow. This just a, I think you can delete these, yeah. This we're going to make like a red, something like that. And then we will actually decrease the opacity here, increase it a bit, and create a bit of a fade. We don't actually need to do this with the opacity, but that will be factored in, and I'll show you how we're going to set this up with the material. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to click this here so it's selected, and then I can just slot it into the atlas. And as soon as you have it in the atlas, it will, well, we have to save these first. Okay, as soon as you have it in the, oh, we didn't actually add it into the atlas. So we're going to add the one we just created, new curve base. There we go. You see it shows up in the curve after it's in the atlas. Okay, so we have our curve. We want to, we're going to multiply this with just a linear gradient like this, the y. Because that, well, here I'll show you what the linear gradient does. If we plug this into the opacity, so it just fades from one to the other. Which we can also do in the curve, but I found it's nice to be able to just kind of have freedom to do whatever you want in the curve and know you're never going to get the harsh fade up, fall off, and it will always fade nicely. That being said, it's nice to have the ability to turn it off. So we are actually going to create another switch. We'll rename this, and we'll just call it use linear fall off. So this would be true, and if not, we'll just use the alpha of the curve itself directly, which will multiply into this. Thinking about this, I think actually I don't want this to multiply here. I think we just want the full fade to go into the opacity and not the Keller. That being said, all the ones you're seeing here are set up in the other way, so it's not like it'll look bad, but I want to see what this does. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to boost this. So in my curve under red, I'm just going to make this like 16, and I'm going to make this like, let's make it kind of nuts, 32. Okay, and let's see what that. Okay. And that's the material. And then let us set it up here. So if we drag this out, we can create a instance, and let's dump the instance on there, and let's start messing with this instance. To see what options we have. Okay, so if we turn off use linear fall off, see how it's a lot harsher right there. I like the smooth. Use texture color. Let's turn that off actually. So you notice it will, I'm gonna pull this up here too. We can mess around with our curve here, where let's say we wanted to like add in a little thing of blue. We have pretty big colors. We'll just make this 8. I think 32 is a bit too much. We can actually, can we paste that? No, but we can kind of drag this in here. And we could add, yeah, like different little sections. I don't like the blue though. We can make these different variants of orange though. There we go, that's not bad. And then let's mess with the other things here. I'm going to also expose the texture here. So convert to parameter, and I'm just going to call this flame texture. In case we want to change that. So flame curve. What was that parameter? Flame. Oh, right. So yeah, we can change. This relates to if we had multiple. So I'm just gonna make another curve here, linear color, and I'm gonna throw that into the atlas. So add an option, there it is. So then this relates to what index of the flame curve it's going for. This really shouldn't be a parameter, but it gets listed when the curve gets listed. So see this just fades it out. This we're going to set up in the our blueprint, the height ratio, so you can see how stretched you want it. Both can give a nice effect depending on what you want. You can make it go faster. And you can make it tile more. Or actually making it tile less can be kind of a nice effect. So like that's 0.1. It makes it a bit smoother. And if you look at a lot of Reentry, it almost kind of looks like this. Granted, here, let's make it a bit faster. We'll go with something like that. And I want mine to be a bit less yellow. I want a bit more red here and there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now that we have our material, we're going to Control Shift S, save everything, and we are going to set up our, we're going to make this real quick, which is just like a teleport box, and then we're going to set it up in the third person character to actually fade in and fade out with the when you fall correctly, like that. Okay, the teleport box is pretty simple. Let me actually pull that up so I can recreate it. That will just be an actor blueprint. I'm not even going to name it. And it's going to be a cube. And the main thing, I changed the material, but you don't need to. You just change it to overlap all, just like that. And then in the overlap all, we are doing begin overlap. And then we will just check get player pawn. And then if this is equal to that, then which we will branch, we will teleport, which Unreal has an actual node for, so not too bad. And then the last thing here, we'll just make actually we don't need to do that. We can just do this, promote to variable, and we will make that a instance editable and 3D widget, just like that. So we'll compile that, save, and you notice if we drag it in, it's kind of small. We'll scale it up. So you see this 3D widget. You can move it directly, or you can just set it in here. So what did I set my other one to? I set it to 9,000, which puts you nice high up in the sky, right up there. That's from the previous tutorial, if you want to learn how to make a stylized sky. And then you can just run into it. Oh, it's teleporting the wrong thing. We want it to teleport the player, not itself. So if you run into it, there you go. Bam. So that's the teleport box. I added in, I'll just show the material on the old one. Very simple. It's just, this is a default grid texture, and I just put that into the opacity mask with a normal color to make the little grid pattern. Alright, let's get into third person. So this is just like a blank version of the third person. I'm actually going to grab this, and I'm going to jump over to the third person game mode, and I'm going to replace the character, so that way you notice it doesn't work anymore since we're just the default third person character. I think I did increase when you're falling, the air control to 1 is the only other difference. Okay, first thing we'll do, we'll create, we're actually going to add in an arrow. And we'll call this velocity arrow. And that's going to go under the player mesh right there. And we are going to put this at a distance of about 70. And then we're going to zero this out other than the y, which will be 90. And I'll show you what that's doing. That just means we actually want it minus 90. It's facing straight down. So that way we can grab our half sphere and we can, I think we can just drag it in like this. There we go. And we can reposition the half sphere a little bit. So I'm actually going to drag it up a little bit like that. Okay, right around minus 20 seems okay for the size of the half sphere I wanted. I wanted a bit smaller actually. So we're gonna do 0.8 and I'll drag it down. I just want it past the feet, just like that. Okay. I don't want it too far down because then when you land you can see the clipping a lot more. You could actually probably, if the clipping was annoying, you could probably add a depth fade to this material here. That's something here. I'm just gonna have that as a note. We're not gonna cover that here, but there's a lot of things you could do to this material. So for example, as a preview, like you can put it on weird shapes and get an effect kind of like that, which I think is pretty cool. And all that is, that's the same setup that we're doing here, but it is just a, instead of a circle, you just got a weird shape with the material on it. Like that. And it's just kind of edited in Blender to fit around the ship. Okay, in the construction script, we will create dynamic. Material instance right here. Oh. Let's actually grab that. That's the one we want. I'm actually going to create this, turn this into a variable because I want to, we'll grab our, not this one, but we want the instance. And we'll throw that in here. And then we actually want a reference to this, so this is mat reentry. Okay, so that is what we want. I'm actually going to rename this just a reentry effect. Just that. Just so my blueprints look the same. All of this is going to be on tick, but we are going to be putting in booleans to make sure it doesn't run when it doesn't need to. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is grab the velocity, which is going to be at the very bottom, get velocity right there. And then we are going to break this, break vector, because we want the z velocity. You could have it work on the y and x. You're welcome to do that in your game. And we are going to actually add two more float variables. This was going to be interp speed, which will be float, and we'll give this a default value of like 5. And we're going to make that the source material instance editable as well. And we're going to add a fade value here. Okay, which we'll just leave as 0. Okay, so what we want to do here is we are going to map range. I'm going to do unclamped. You can clamp it as well if you want. Oh, you know what? I know why I multiplied this in here. We're going to leave this here, the full fade. That's so it can get brighter if you're going faster, which we want, since this not only controls the opacity, but it makes it brighter. Okay. So now we're going to set up a Boolean here and some values. Both of these will be 0, but what we're going to map it to is we're going to do -1000 to -4000, and we're going to map this from 0 to 1. And what that means is nothing will happen until we're moving more than -1000, and then it will go up to 1 as soon as we're -4000. And that is roughly, if you print here, if we print string, the velocity, actually we want just a z. Do we have the right blank? So if we print string, see we're going 0, and then it goes up to about 4000 where it maxes out. So that's where we're getting those numbers. As you've noticed, this was turned on. We're going to turn off the visibility here by default. Okay, so now that we have these are going to be and we're going to make a branch here. So all of this stuff we only want to happen if neither of these things are happening. So this will actually attach to the false branch of this. And then there's going to be 3 things that we're going to do. So the first thing is we're going to create a branch here, and we need to turn on the visibility, right? But we only want to turn it on when we are supposed to. So we are going to grab this here and just ask, is visible? So that's going to be 1. And the thing we're going to check here is it not equal, not Boolean? So we want to make sure it's not equal, and the fade value is this greater than 0. So if this fade value is greater than 0 and it's not already visible, then you can probably guess what we want to do. We want to take the reentry effect and we want to set its visibility to visible. So that will, here, I'm going to be loyal to you guys. We're not going to use the one that we made before. We're going to use the one we made. So then, let's see. Oh, I think the fade value is getting set to 0. Yeah, the fade value is 0, so that's not showing up. But here, let's set the fade value to 1. this should show up. Oh, it's off. Visibility. Oh, because it's 1, of course, and it's not visible. So that's working. Okay. So now we're going to create the actual velocity fading system, which we are going to use. We're basically going to be setting the fade value. And to do this, we are going to use f_interp. And we're going to use f_interp constant. You kind of want this to be a constant because the normal f_interp, it never really reaches 0 how you want it. You could make it work if you use like nearly equals and stuff like that, but it's just never going to be the same. This, we will use this clamped value here, which will be the target. And then this will just be delta seconds, get world delta seconds. And then remember we had an interp speed, which is set to 5, which will go right here. And then this is where we can grab our reentry mat and set scalar parameter value. And this is called full fade, which is, remember, that's what we actually have it called right there. So you can literally, if you're careful, you can literally just copy and paste that name into there to make sure you have it right. And then we're also going to set up a rotation thing, but we're going to do that after this. We're going to just copy this entire top section and we're going to paste it down here, because this is going to be very similar but different. So the main thing is this won't be not, this will be, hey, if it is visible, and instead of greater than, this is going to be less than or equal, or it's like, hey, if this is less than or equal to 0 and it's visible, get rid of it and turn it off. So let's see how this works. So there you go. Oh, one thing I missed here. Set this to two-sided. There we go. Bam. Oh, I think I increased the speed a lot too. So let's increase the walk speed by like 5, since that actually max walk speed. We'll increase it to like 2,000. So we should be rather quick now. Yes, we are. So you notice we can move around a bit quicker in the air as well. So the final thing we're going to add here is the rotational effect. So what that does, I'm just going to turn this on real quick, is it means as we're kind of falling, it will, I'm going to turn off this rotational snap, it will kind of rotate a bit in the direction that we want it to. So this should be -90, I think. Yes. And I'm actually going to bring it down and bring this up. So that way the axis in which it rotates is kind of down here, which I think makes a bit more sense. Which we will set up just after here. So set relative rotation, velocity arrow. Yes, that's what we want. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to get the relative rotation down here. And then we are going to use an f-interp constant as well. Or not f-interp, but it'll be r-interp constant for the rotation. We're going to plug this in here, and then we're going to just grab these values like this for the delta seconds and time. And then for this, we're actually going to, I'm going to grab the velocity, and we are going to make rot from x. And then this is world space right here. So what we want this to be is we're going to get the actor transform. And we are going to do inverse transform rotation right there. And that will convert it into local space for the relative rotation. And let's see if this is working correctly. So, oh, we forgot to turn it off. Visible. There we go. And you notice, I think it looks like it's going the wrong direction. Let's check here. We're gonna increase the air control. You can't actually, this is actually tied to the movement walk speed, so let's make this like 9,000, quite nuts. Yeah, a bit. Let's see if that's working right. Let's give ourselves a bit of space. Other than this, I think this is the tutorial. There's plenty of other ways to do this. You can create tons of different curves, as you see here. And you can obviously make the shapes different. And you can add additional like particles and stuff like that, which you would just attach kind of at the bottom to add some sparks or smoke effects. So let's do this so we can see it. I don't think that's actually working. Maybe the rotation is not working. Target, transform, velocity. I think maybe does this need to be normalized? Let's see here. If you want to figure out how to do this, then stick around. If not, yeah, I hope you Let's plug this directly into here, just as like a sanity check to see, like, okay, is it the fade? Okay, it's certainly moving there. Okay, that works. I think this fade effect might be too slow for it. Yeah, I think it just makes it too subtle. The reason I added this fade effect is, so if you look, oh, you know what? I know why this isn't working. Because this, oh no, that's right. Because if you have it like this, then as soon as you land, you see it. Here, I'll do it without moving. where it goes right, and then it snaps 90 degrees. So if you didn't have this fade, so for example, if you just did this, and you just had it turn off immediately, it wouldn't look bad. But because this fades in, this also needs to fade, otherwise you have that snapping. But what that means is the rotational system is a bit less prominent. It seems like it is working though, it's just very subtle. Okay, if y'all have any questions, this is a system I'm looking to build on. As we kind of mentioned, like a depth fade might be useful here. You can use that within particles where, like, when things get close to a wall or the ground, it will fade up. And that, I think, would be appropriate if you're, particularly if you have like a drop pod where it lands in the ground and you want the fire effect to both fade away but not see that harsh clipping with the ground. Things like that would be quite nice. There's also some additional systems that would be quite advantageous around the ships of like different shapes. Like, I'm sure you could probably dynamically kind of stretch the ship outline, or even make it so use maybe like a system that you would use for grass, where it would be, you use it to keep it vertical, but use that to like keep the flame trails aligned with how the ship is coming down. So there's plenty of options here. I like the curve atlas. You can get some nice Kellers. It gives you a good amount of control. But if y'all have any additional ideas or thoughts on how to make this reentry effect better, then feel free to comment them or ask questions. Catch y'all later.